Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full Marvel Secret Invasion Episode 6 finale video. There are a whole bunch of Easter eggs and references and teasers that set up upcoming Marvel Phase 5 movies, so we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. I'll be doing episode videos for Ahsoka when it starts in a couple weeks, and then Loki Season 2 episodes later this year. There's still a bunch of big stuff coming up, including the Marvels movie as well, which this is meant to directly set up. Careful for spoilers if you haven't seen the episode yet, because we'll be talking about everything. We'll just start at the beginning and work our way through shot by shot, talking about Easter eggs, WTF moments, and all the stuff that it sets up. Starting with the title, Home, which is a reference to the Skrulls' home, like the titular thing that Nick Fury has been blamed for this entire series, not finding the Skrulls a home. In effect, the home winds up being Earth, as we suspected earlier. Like, the idea is that the remaining Skrulls will live on Earth. The big surprise, though, is that there is no compromise. I'd actually been expecting President Ritson to go the complete other direction, and he actually declares all-out war on every Skrull, every man, woman, and child Skrull. The only exception he makes are to aliens who are born on Earth. Remember, though, he said aliens, even though he was talking mostly about the Skrulls. This includes Asgardians, any alien that is born in outer space and then comes to Earth. Suddenly, Valkyrie is waking up from a drunk stupor saying, wait a minute, what? Why are they trying to declare war on New Asgard? We're crazy strong. There's no way they're going to defeat us. Somebody call Thor back to planet Earth. So the whole idea here is this is meant to tee off the Marvel Phase 5 Dark Reign, where Thunderbolt Ross eventually becomes President of the United States. There's also a direct line that Nick Fury has at the end of the episode where I think it completely foreshadows how that winds up happening. What happens at the end of the episode with the war on the Skrulls will also spill into Daredevil Born Again and set up how Kingpin winds up becoming mayor in New York City during the events of that series next year. Although there's a strike right now, there might be some delays. I think that some of Daredevil Born Again will premiere next year. The actual opening scene is Nick Fury calling their home's landline for the first time, he jokes, like he's tried a bunch of times this past 15 years that he's been away on missions, but never actually done it. And even though he is Nick Fury, he has ironclad plans about how they're going to defeat Gravik and trick the Skrulls. He still implies that he might not make it back alive. Like, there's a small chance, but a very small chance. Then in the next scene, they wind up paying off a bunch of people's theories. I saw a bunch of people commenting about this, so pat yourself on the back if you suspected that Emilia Clarke was going to pretend to be Nick Fury when they went to New Skrullos. Secretly, Emilia Clarke's Gaia pretends to be Nick Fury coming to New Skrullos to engineer that entire scenario where she winds up taking him down, taking revenge for the death of her father, Talos, and her mother, because Gravik did technically kill both of them in cold blood.
My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
This is meant to pay off that line of dialogue where she told Nick Fury she'd put on a brave face, like she literally is going to pretend to be him putting on his face in order to get close enough to Gravik to kill him. Mostly because there's no way Nick Fury would actually have a chance at beating him in his Super Skrull form, including getting the powers of all the Avengers and a whole bunch of other villains, including Thanos of all people. Like, literally every person in the MCU's powers. It's crazy.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
And even if Nick Fury did have superpowers, the radiation would slowly be killing him anyway. But Gaia is both a Skrull, largely immune to the effects of the radiation, and she's a Super Skrull, like Gravik, will get way more power, so it'll be a much more even match. This should also remind you that Nick Fury's whole MO, like his whole thing in the MCU, is just doing really good resource management. His resources just happen to be superpowered people and super weapons like the Avengers and the Skrulls. It's all about just being a really good manager of people. While this gets started, Skrull Rhodey is still trying to get the president to attack Russia to set off World War III. All of his other advisors, this was kind of a funny scene, like the fleet admirals, generals, all telling him to chill so they can get more information before they completely nuke the planet. And even though they kind of buried the lead on this, early on it seemed like the president started to suspect that something was up with Rhodey because he had such a boner for firing nuclear weapons on Russia. Then when Gaia, in Nick Fury form, starts walking through the compound, coughing, getting deeper into the power plant, pulling out the meter, that's all just for show, assuming that there might be other Skrulls there watching her, so she just wants to put on a good show for them. Lay it on extra thick, cough a couple extra times. Sonya Falsworth and the real Nick Fury try to work a smokescreen and trick Rhodey into helping the president so that they can get closer to him and get rid of Skrull Rhodey. That was the whole reason why he told her the truth about Skrody in last week's episode, so that she would know that he's a Skrull. When they start having the Gaia, Nick Fury, and Gravik scenes, there were a couple of great speeches here, like great speeches from Kingsley Ben-Adir. But in service of this, you kind of have to bend over backwards a little bit. Like there are a couple leaps in logic that they make, like, okay, you gotta go with this on this. The idea is that the Skrulls should be able to detect each other, so when she shows up pretending to be Nick Fury, shouldn't Gravik be able to detect that it's her? They drop a whole bunch of Avengers and comic book references. When he starts referencing the Avengers coming to save him, still thinking that it is Nick Fury, the invisible cloak and shield are references to a couple different things. There's the organization shield itself, which was dismantled in the MCU after Winter Soldier. There's also a reference to Captain America's shield as well. And at least in the comics, Nick Fury has a special cloak with unstable molecules that turns him invisible, like it's an invisibility cloak, prevents him from being detected by even the Watcher. That's how good it is. They use the speech for a little more backstory exposition too. Gravik reveals that the human face he's been wearing this whole time, like Kingsley Ben-Adir's face, is the face of the first human that Gravik ever killed when he was going on missions for him when he had the Skrulls operating as that secret team within S.H.I.E.L.D., sort of his answer to the Black Widow program. The funny thing here, though, he gets really mad, like Nick Fury, you don't remember that this is the face of the person that you asked me to kill, the very first person, is because it's Emilia Clarke's Gaia character. Of course, she would not remember that person. Under normal circumstances, she would just take Nick Fury's memories or copy his memories so that she would learn more of these secrets. But Nick Fury's secrets are kind of like his children, like they're more precious to him almost than the Avengers are. There's no way that Nick Fury was going to let her scan his mind. Like, no, way too many secrets in there. It's meant to be a very cats in the cradle kind of speech, with Gravik having it out with him in how he did terrible things that drove him crazy, all in the name of making Nick Fury proud, kind of like a son talking about the approval of their father figure. Early on, my theory for why things were so personal between Gravik and Nick Fury is because he was kind of like his surrogate father, and they kind of implied that early in the flashbacks, but they never really literally went there. There are a lot of people that even wondered if he might be Nick Fury's biological son, but obviously that's not true. The vibe here is sort of like a child realizing that their parents are fallible people and utterly fail them in some way when they become adults. In this case, it's the failure to find the Skrulls a permanent world to live on. Really solid speech here from Kingsley Ben-Adir. I feel like he's an amazing actor, but most of the scenes that they've given him during the series weren't up to his level. Like, he had a couple of good speeches during the series, but only a couple. When Emilia Clarke says Nick Fury realized there were no suitable other planets the Skrulls could live on, it would have to be Earth, that seems a little convenient just to engineer this scenario. The universe is meant to be massive. Even if you're only talking about habitable M-class planets capable of sustaining life, scientists in real life, like this is a real thing, based on data, believe there are about 10 billion habitable planets out there. 10 billion, and Nick Fury couldn't find one. That is crazy. They revealed there's still a colony out there in space somewhere that's still loyal to the previous Skrull Emperor. Talos mentioned him a little while ago. The Skrulls could have gone to wherever that colony is. The whole speech about it being easier to save everyone's lives than it is to change their minds is just the idea that everybody on Earth is stuck in their ways and super xenophobic against aliens that do not look like them, which is the exception for the Asgardians. People generally love the Asgardians, like they love Thor, they love Valkyrie. It seems like it's a huge tourist destination. But the whole idea is that Asgardians look pretty much like humans, so they could just walk around normally undetected and people wouldn't notice the difference. Skrulls cannot do that. But I think part of the idea here is because this is Emilia Clarke pretending to be Nick Fury, telling Gravik all these things, a lot of this is meant to be Gaia's take on everything that's happened in the history with Nick Fury. It's not like Nick Fury made her memorize a giant long speech before she went in here, like a lot of this is just coming from her completely. But part of the idea here is this meant to be kind of a long con that she's playing here, just trying to goad him into the situation where he tries to give himself all these powers and she gets powers too. That's what I think she meant when she was talking about Nick Fury wanting to escape his responsibilities or being happy that he was snapped during Avengers Infinity War by Thanos. Even though the real Nick Fury did go to the Saber space station, he was still working there even though he joked about it being a vacation. He would never purposefully run away from his responsibilities or trying to protect everyone. Plus the whole fact that he was giving Gravik all the Avengers, all these other superpowered people's DNA should have been a clue that this was meant to be a ruse. Like, no, I want you to take this and activate this device. They make a bunch more Avengers references and reveal that there's way more superpowered beings' DNA inside there besides just the original Avengers and Captain Marvel. Like, it goes way beyond those characters. They only show us part of the readout on the screen, but the ones they do show us are Ghost, which powers they use later in the episode. She'll be back during the Thunderbolts too, so the character is coming back. They have Thanos' DNA. That would actually be enough by itself. Like, you don't need all these other people's powers, you just need Thanos' powers. All of his Black Order, like Corvus Glaive, Cull Obsidian, Ebony Maw, the Outriders, Proxima Midnight, they've also got the Abomination's DNA, which is a little confusing because the Abomination wasn't at the final battle in Avengers Endgame, and that's where they got all this DNA. There's Korg, the Guardians of the Galaxy, Frost Beast, the Hulk, Black Panther. Even though technically he doesn't have powers the same way you'd think about superpowered beings, the heart-shaped herb gives him super strength, gives him some special superpowers. They've got the Chitauri's DNA, all the major Asgardians like Thor, Valkyrie, regular Asgardian DNA, just a little bit different from Thor's DNA because he was born a god, so like he has a special celestial DNA. Valkyrie is just meant to be like a normal Asgardian with extra weapons that make her way more powerful, like she's a highly trained Asgardian. They've also got Winter Soldier's DNA, but his powers are meant to be the exact same as Captain America, so there's a bunch of duplicates here if we're talking about giving yourself everybody's powers, like it doesn't seem very efficient. But the big idea here is that now she has all these same powers, and she can perfectly mimic pretty much any superhero that was at the final battle in Avengers Endgame and a bunch of supervillains too. Like Thanos, think about it, that's crazy. Not just mimic their appearances, but perfectly mimic their powers like the Super Skrulls from comic book Secret Invasion. So this is like the small way that they went comic book Secret Invasion. This now basically makes her one of the most powerful characters in the MCU because technically Scarlet Witch's DNA would have been at the final battle in Avengers Endgame, meaning that she got Scarlet Witch's DNA too. They just didn't show it on screen. Gravik starts to use Hulk Gamma powers to Hulk out, trying to kill who he still thinks is Nick Fury, and they engineer this all for a big reaction shot where she stops the punch and then goes Hulk in that one hand and punches him out of the base. This whole ending fight scene with them just swapping around different powers is basically like a larger version of that ending cameo scene from Ryan Reynolds' Free Guy movie where he uses a bunch of the Avengers powers at the same time, only that movie had a Chris Evans cameo. Funny how now we're going to see Ryan Reynolds come back in Deadpool 3 and do a whole bunch of crazy Easter eggs and references. Like it's going to get super meta just because of all the X-Men, the MCU stuff that are blending together. When they're fighting, he starts using Abomination and Groot powers. That's what the hardened skin here is, Abomination, not the Hulk. That's also why his ears change shape to look like the Abominations. This is new character design that started with the Shang-Chi movie. She starts healing herself with the Extremis powers, then uses Drax powers for some reason. I'm not sure why Drax, because she has access to way more powerful powers like the Hulk's powers. When she teleports, that's meant to be her using Ghost's phasing ability. He changes to Korg. She also uses Korg abilities and Frost Beast powers for Frost-based abilities. She switches to Captain Marvel's powers in combination with Cull Obsidian's powers to make her body super durable. The funny thing about that is that Captain Marvel is already super durable, so it'd be like Superman using a hammer. Like Superman doesn't need a hammer, it doesn't make him stronger or more durable. Gravik pretty much does the same thing, like they end the fight mostly using Captain Marvel-based powers. One of the weird moments, though, is when she stops him mid-air because of Mantis's abilities. And here's the thing, I think the justification for her knowing how to use Mantis's powers on the fly here, like immediately, just that she gets them, is because Nick Fury at some point has briefed her on how everyone's powers work. They engineered this whole scenario, like Nick Fury planned this out for this all to happen, so he probably showed her the most epic Avengers-level YouTube tutorial on everyone's powers. That's probably why she's familiar with how to use some of them. You notice when she posts up here too, watching him fall to the ground after giving him a full blast of Captain Marvel's powers, her pose is meant to be a reference to the same Captain Marvel pose she made at the end of that first movie. Speaking of Deadpool references, she also makes another epic superhero landing before she finally takes him out. She basically finally takes him out with another full blast of Captain Marvel's powers. And that's pretty much the end of Gravik. She winds up releasing all the humans that the Skrulls had captured at that particular base. They wind up finding another base with a ton more people later in the episode. We see the real Everett Ross and the real Rhodey for those people wondering how they were going to pay this off, what happened to the real Rhodey, and they confirm a long-running theory that it was after Captain America Civil War that they replaced him. He's in the hospital gown that he was in during Captain America Civil War. That's when they swapped him out. That means for a lot of Marvel Phase 3, in everything that's happened up until now, he's been a Skrull. That will be important for how they set up Iron Man Armor Wars. The whole idea is that Skrull Rhodey used his access to all this Iron Man technology to do all these shady things all over the globe, and Rhodey has to deal with the consequences of that, all that Iron Man tech falling into all these shady people's hands. One of those people winds up being Val and the new President Thunderbolt Ross. The whole idea is that Val is responsible for the resurrection of Ultron accidentally. Like Damage Control is kind of meant to be a villain of that Armor Wars series. They're already co-opting a lot of Iron Man tech to begin with, like we saw that during Spider-Man No Way Home. Reportedly, Justin Hammer is coming back during that, like he'll probably get a pardon from Val and Thunderbolt Ross in order to work for them on Iron Man Tech to build them more weapons, and one of the consequences of that will be the resurrection or the reactivation of the Ultron Protocol, which has been dormant this whole time. So it'll be kind of like a Rhodey versus Ultron movie, ultimately. Separately, the real Nick Fury tries to save the president with Sonya Falsworth's help. The reason why he didn't kill all the Secret Service men is because they're real people, and if he had actually killed them, he would be a fugitive and have to go to jail after this was all done, even if he did save the president. And they finally answered the question that a lot of people were asking after last week's episode. If you can prove that someone is a Skrull, get them to revert back to form by just shooting part of their body, why didn't he do that before? It's because they wanted to save it for this moment here where he shoots them in the head. That also felt kind of convenient, because if he'd have done that in last week's episode, that would have solved a lot of problems. Then one of the bigger surprises of the episode is that the president goes a completely different direction with all this. Like, he declares open war on the Skrulls. Like, he gives this big presidential address to the US, but pretty much everybody around the world sees it, saying that at least at first, they're mostly going after the Skrulls and they're going to kill every single one of them, inspiring a bunch of vigilantes, which will make you think of Daredevil, Born Again, and the Punisher character. Like, that's basically his MO, being a vigilante. This is meant to set up the Marvel Phase 5 Dark Reign, like kind of a more sinister reign as villains come to power, and all these vigilantes that they tease running around, good and bad vigilantes. Like, the whole idea is that they're killing people left and right in the streets, like people just running around shooting people who they presume are Skrulls. Some of them are, and some of them are not. Like, they wind up killing a bunch of innocent people. That's why they show you the vigilantes in Great Britain killing the real Prime Minister, thinking that she was still a Skrull. This will probably spill into the events of Daredevil Born Again. Expect them to address that whole idea of street-level vigilantes just going around shooting everybody in the street. Kingpin also probably uses that to become mayor of New York City, saying that he'll get rid of the bad vigilantes and get rid of the Skrulls, and Daredevil will just have to deal with that. I've already done a whole bunch of videos about Daredevil Born Again, so I'll post links down in the description, but there were a couple of big news releases recently about the villains during that series. There'll be 18 episodes, so there's like a whole bunch of stuff that's going on during that. This is also where we get to the big teaser for Captain America 4 Brave New World and Thunderbolt Ross becoming the next president of the United States after Ritson here. When Nick Fury calls him, tells him he mucked everything up by declaring war on the Skrulls, making the whole situation even worse, he says that's a real one-term president kind of thing. I think that explains how Thunderbolt Ross becomes the next US president, because he just winds up winning the next election. Think about it this way, there's this whole war on Skrulls, vigilantes everywhere running around with guns, him being this distinguished military man. That's basically Thunderbolt Ross's specialty, being a wartime president. Then they have a big teaser for Emilia Clarke's Gaia character and where she's headed in the future of the movies. Sonya Falsworth shows up to recruit her, and it's meant to be kind of like a parallel for Nick Fury showing up to recruit Iron Man for the Avengers in the post-credit scene for the first Iron Man movie. But this is meant to be a teaser for Excalibur in the MCU. They're basically like a British version of the Avengers, but they're doing a version that now it seems like in the MCU at some point. I don't know which movie that's going to happen in, but for those of you that have wanted to see Captain Britain, some of the other major British characters in the comics start showing up, this is them basically saying that, oh yeah, we're probably going to do that. This would be a really good excuse to have a reunion between Kit Harington's Black Knight and Emilia Clarke in the MCU. Like, don't I know you from somewhere? Do you still also know nothing? Part of the reason why I think she's going to be doing this stuff, this Excalibur-related stuff on Earth, leading the Skrulls, is because she's still kind of salty at Nick Fury for everything that's happened and the death of her parents. Part of the idea, too, is that she's going to become the leader of all the Skrulls on Earth as well, too, kind of like the new Skrull Empress. When the series was first announced a couple years ago, a lot of people wondered maybe she'll wind up being Varanki, who is the Skrull Empress during Secret Invasion in the comics. Remember, though, the real Skrull Emperor, or the former Skrull Emperor, seems like he's still alive out there with another sect of Skrulls, which could be bad news for characters in the MCU in the future. We'll see what they wind up doing with those characters. Then they have a big teaser for the Marvels movie when he starts talking to his wife about the Kree being open to peace talks with the Skrulls. That's meant to be a reference to the Kree-Skrull War in the comics and their history in the MCU. They dealt with some of that during the events of the first Captain Marvel movie. The Kree-Skrull War is something that's been going on for about 100 years, but it's been localized to this part of the universe. It's just spilled over into the Milky Way galaxy, like near Earth, just a little bit. During the events of that movie, the trailer made it seem like this is meant to be a ruse by the Kree, who are trying to rebuild their power base in the movie by stealing the resources from other planets using the other bangle, like Miss Marvel's other bangle that Dar-Ben winds up getting. That does not seem like a race of people who wants to make peace with their ancient enemies. When he starts talking about the Peace Summit and his wife says that she has to eventually come back to planet Earth, that probably means that they'll address that during the movie. Like, it will have already happened when the events of the Marvels movie picks up and she'll have come back to Earth, and she's probably not going to be in that movie. Probably one of the other biggest surprises of the finale here is that there's no post-credit scene and no big cameo scene. I would have expected at least a cameo from someone in the Marvels movie like Monica Rambeau or Captain Marvel. Right now when this is taking place, Monica Rambeau has already started working for him on that Saber space station. You see that during the Marvels trailer. I've already done a much bigger video for the Marvels trailer, so I'll post a link for that down in the description below and at the end of this. But this is just meant to set up Marvel Phase 5 Dark Reign era just in general. Some of the movies, some of the Disney Plus series will address that. Not everything is going to cross over. Some of it's more connected to the Loki, Kang multiverse war plot and what's happening with Avengers 5 Kang Dynasty. Like the other stuff, like all this is meant to be Earth-based stuff for the most part, with a few exceptions like the Marvels movie. As far as they said, they don't have any plans to do Secret Invasion Season 2, but if you did spot any other Easter eggs or references in the episode that I didn't talk about in the video, just write them below in the comments. There were a couple great moments that they had during the series, but just in general, I would have liked to see a more Avengers-level version of this, like a more comic book accurate version of Secret Invasion with a bunch more characters. The next big thing will be the Ahsoka episodes. That'll start in August. Of course, I'll be doing videos for all the episodes. Then after that will be Loki Season 2 episodes later this year. So be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss any of that. There'll be more trailers for Ahsoka pretty soon too, and Loki Season 2 as well. Click here for all my Comic-Con trailer videos from this past weekend, and click here for that brand new Marvels trailer. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.